So that was interesting, wasn't it, brother?
It was interesting and
Yeah.
and unexpected.
Say more.
Well, I didn't, when we went on, what day was that? Saturday?
Saturday. Yeah.
Well, when we went on, we didn't even plan what we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
We just started talking, and
Yeah. And I'm thinking, and again, the follow up too. Yeah. So welcome everybody to the Regeneration podcast. Yeah. Say more. Continue.
well, the response really
Yeah.
blew me
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We literally had no idea what we talk about. We've never, you might have noticed, Michael, that without rushing, all of a sudden, I thought we had a fun conversation. And then because it was recent news, and I've mentioned how not only my son Aiden, but other people just tease me that like we haven't helped ourselves get our message out there with any like savvy. There you go. There's a regeneration mug you have, and I'm wearing a
come
regeneration.
on, what do you mean
Yeah.
no savvy? Check that
I
out.
am willing to take
We
orders
got
online. We
swag.
have a friend. Yeah. There was a friend who well, I don't know, a listener who asked if he could get a t-shirt. So I talked to my t-shirt person, Lucy, who happens to be my youngest daughter. And I think she can help us out. So like
Right.
other people, if you have interest, let us know. But the so that night, normally, we're way too lackadaisical, or I can only speak for myself. But I will record a podcast. I'll just like be busy in the garden the rest of the day. Then I get around to it Sunday afternoon or something. But it was a nice day here, and I was in the garden, and I thought, you know what, that was pretty topical. And let me just, for our listeners' sake, throw it up there. They might find it interesting. And yeah, there was a lot of interest.
Yeah, and it was, but I think it wasn't. I mean, part of the reason it was interesting is because it kind of gave people permission to speak, but not just us, but just the events themselves. With
Yeah, yeah.
Robert Kennedy dropping out of the race, throwing his weight behind Donald Trump, and and the brilliance of his message. He's real. I mean, it's hard not to be impressed by the way that guy speaks. But it's
No,
weird, because I mean, people, you, me, people who are interested in the things we're interested in, I think, um, whether they support Donald Trump or not, could certainly resonate with um Bobby Kennedy's message, right?
we would
But it was
think
the
so. And yet
time.
there's some people who would say that he's insane, that he's this or that. He
Well,
is
they
the
say
guy,
that.
Michael. He put a dead bear, lest you forget. And so he is unforgivable. He put a dead bear in Central Park, brother.
So what? You should hear some of the things that's why I like
Yeah.
him. You
Yeah.
know,
It means
I
he went to
mean,
college and had a good time. Yeah.
well, oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
my sister, when she was a college student at Adrian College in Southern Michigan, uh, what they used to do, since there was no internet or video games, on the weekends, they drink beer and go cow tipping.
Yeah. People do it.
Yeah, well, then the kids don't do it anymore, but because they don't go outside. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's kind of cool stuff. And then we were all, but the thing is, um, the media tries to trash Bobby Kennedy about dumb stuff like he there was a dead whale that washed up, and he used a chainsaw to cut its head off so he could have the skull. I do that kind of stuff all the time. Not with whales, of course, because I don't live near where whales are,
Yeah.
but I
Right. Right.
want,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, my
Uh-huh.
my house is full of skulls, right?
Yeah.
Um, and because
I didn't know that story. Yeah. It's funny.
but the thing is, so here's the thing is, yesterday was our CSA delivery day.
Uh-huh.
So I drive, I don't know, I think the round trip is probably 130 miles or something.
Yeah.
To drive I go to the Ann Arbor, and then to Detroit area, come
You
home.
say it's a long day. Yeah.
Well, it's only, I leave the house at 3 o'clock and get back at 7. It's not
Do you
bad.
listen to podcasts? Do you listen to
Well, that's
books
what I
on the
do. And
table?
that's the only time I listen to podcasts, because
Okay.
I was listening to Megan Kelly's podcast, and she was rehashing the Bobby Kennedy thing, and she had a couple of guests. And
Okay.
the one guest, I can't remember his name. Miller is his last name, I think. Was just trashing Bobby Kennedy, which is what they do as a kook or some kind
Yeah.
of a freak. But
Yeah.
usually that's based on his opinions about vaccines and stuff like that. But guess
Yeah.
what? I'm all on board, and I tell people I'm a legacy anti-vaxxer going back 30 some
Yeah.
years.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so I don't have any problems with that. Um, but that's why I say people a lot, and I did notice that a lot of people I posted the clip we're going to talk about today. I posted it on the notes feature on my Substack the other day.
And it was sent to me by I think my youngest son wanted to show me it, or maybe I did, and it was also sent to me via a post from Twitter as just a text to me from my oldest son.
Like, yeah, because I listened to that.
And they knew I would like it. It wasn't the whole thing, it was 12 minutes, right?
That was mind blowing.
Yeah,
The whole thing was pretty good, but that
I
last
heard,
12
yeah.
minutes, actually, a friend of mine who's really interested in Sophiology and stuff like this, he texted me and he said, I actually came to tears listening to that last 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll talk about what that is in a
And
second.
again, it doesn't for me, yeah. And I want to say it doesn't stir in me that kind of tingly feeling. I'm still trying to give words because at least some of the comments, and I don't know if I had a chance to read all. And again, thank you, everybody who listens. Thank you to each and every comment. I do read everything. And people will see like we get back to a number. But that I think somebody, there was a tone of just say it, folks, it's Trump, Trump, Trump or something. And I just being honest, as much as I know anything, I'm not there. But what I'm more tingly about than a Trump Kennedy um, era, which could be good, could be bad. I don't know. They could be bought. But is the political realignment? Are we living through a political realignment? And
That's inspiring. Yeah.
it is inspiring,
Mhm.
regardless of everything.
And
And I'm not saying say all of my energy is there,
well, the
but
other
it's where I
thing,
have a lot of the warm fuzzies.
I mean, where I have been actually for a long time now is that, and I don't care if people hate me because I'm too old to give a damn, but and I actually, Brett Weinstein, if you know
I
him,
do. Yeah.
because he came out. I mean, he really thinks the Democratic Party right now is the anti-democratic party, and that it's an existential threat. His words exactly to the republic,
Well,
and I agree.
yeah,
I totally agree.
the idea that it's seen as progressive, and also like one of the quotes mentioned in the segment we're going to discuss said that the wealth that voted for the Biden administration was 70% of the wealth. And again, if we're being clear, folks, that is the CIA. It's all this stuff going on there. 70% of the wealth, the Republican vote was 30%. And again, I'm not endorsing one or the other, but I mean, people need to wake up to this. Things have
But
changed. Yep.
and that's what we were saying last time, because we both grew up as Catholic Democrats, right?
I
I
don't know what
mean,
I was. I've never known what
well,
I
no,
was.
but our families were, I'm sure. My
No,
family.
I think my dad might have been, he might have grown up Republican, could the upper Midwest. He was raised Lutheran. And
Okay,
then,
that might be
but all of a
different.
sudden he, I started seeing bumper stickers about like, I'm already against the next war, and that was when I was in high school. So that my dad, who I just saw, the other weekend, he celebrated his 90th. There was an awakening on some things, and that's where I was in kind of college. But I
Right.
tell everybody I didn't know anything. We didn't talk politics. The whole world of
Well,
ideas was a
we
million
didn't.
miles
No, we
away.
didn't. My parents didn't talk politics. I
Yeah,
didn't really know we were Democrats until
yeah,
I was probably 16 or 17 and
yeah.
asked.
I
Because
think my mom, rest
nobody
in
cared
peace, was
back
a
then,
Catholic
right?
Democrat. Nobody cared.
Nobody cared. But the thing is, the reason my parents were and all my relatives were is because I come from, on both sides of the family, really, an Irish working class
Yeah, yeah,
background, Irish Catholic working class background, people in the Union, right?
yeah.
So that was, I mean, there was one girl at my Catholic grade school who people suspected of, coming from a Republican family, and it was like a scandal in the school.
Yeah, but you were saying nobody cared. But on the other hand, you're also, and I'm not accusing you of duplicity, but you're also raising the ethnic piece, right? And couldn't somebody say they did care, but it wasn't about the political party, but if they saw a Catholic or if they saw an Irish person, they just presumed they were Democrat.
Yes,
So we
that's
didn't,
exactly it.
so that we need to nuance that a little
But
bit,
it
or at least
wasn't.
share with our
The thing
listeners.
is, in those days, it was not as you know, an identity thing as
No,
it is nowadays, right?
no, and one didn't imply when you were a Catholic Democrat, you were ethnic, which is cool because all my students ever and most people who've had the misfortune of being in conversation with me love that Stendhalism. You know, when the left and the right came out in France, he was there and he said, the left, love the future and intellectually arrogant. Check, check, right? And the right, morally arrogant and love the past. You know, the right is always accusing other people of being immoral. The left tends to accuse people. So when you had those Catholic Democrats, and I'm just putting this out there, I haven't researched it or actually thought about it, those, when they were kind of these ethnic groups and so forth, they didn't have this condescension. That's part of the political moment we're looking at, where the left, you know, that if
Well,
you represented, they just think you're so stupid. If
well,
you
no, and
dissented
that's
on
it, right?
COVID, you were so stupid.
And
Yeah.
that and amongst, I mean, even though, I mean, if you go back to the Clinton campaigns, no, he was not above trying to appeal to the working class.
No,
No.
no,
And he came from, I mean, he basically came from a working class background. I have
no.
no
Well
respect
said.
for him at all now, but he did.
He did.
Right?
And
Um,
I used to take service trips to Appalachia, and his kind of like work fair thing, remember? He was saying that they were going to tie some welfare to work. And some of the nuns that were doing with Glenmary, you know, just real God's work down there, they were so against what Clinton was doing there, but they had to admit it really helped that part of Appalachia.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think really where it really came down, and I started to notice that the world was a different place, was must have been the 2016 election,
Okay.
when just before the election, like October, maybe September, where Hillary Clinton came out with her famous basket of deplorables
Yeah, that was heavy.
statement, which she's talking about working class people,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Working
yeah,
class white guys in particular, but and I remember hearing that because that was, I was totally checked out of that election. Did not vote. I would refuse to participate in that election.
yeah,
And but when she dropped that, I remember my wife was listening to it. I said, she just signed her death warrant.
yeah. It was bad.
You know, it's
Yeah,
over for the Democrat. But the thing is, the Democrats used to be the people who fought for those people.
yeah. And I think we have to admit we're aware, both of us, of huge elements of that kind of intellectually elitist that still they think that way today, you know, but they've become aware you don't say it publicly. A
Yeah,
basket of deplorables.
well, and plus, you know, hanging out in academia
Some
for,
lives are more important than others.
well, yeah, in academia though, they really hate and they dismiss working class white people in particular as
Mhm.
rednecks.
Yeah,
You know, and they act like they're idiots. Which I hate,
yeah.
you know,
I
and
told you I was in a, this is relevant. It's just an anecdote I don't think I've shared. I was in some type of a deliberative dialogue at the college where I've been involved. And they just gave a topic and it had to do with entertainment on campus. Like how much should be set up? Should they fill the college union with like segways and bubbles? Or should, you know, or if you didn't schedule so much entertainment, couldn't they create their own entertainment? You know, I was always on the side of the bottom up, kind of create your own fun. But in the conversation, I was saying something that I thought would be taken for granted by the other people in my group. Most of them were teachers, college professors. And I was saying how I love junior college transfer students because they know how to entertain themselves better and things like that. And then I had no idea and stepped in it. And most of our listeners would have no idea, but
really,
you get it. Yeah. That they've been, what I said was so horrible. Those JUCO people must be dumb because they stepped out of our 24/7 ministrations. You know, I said, wow, they think for themselves, they've had jobs.
and
And I
that's true.
realized I said something that was an anathema. Is that, yeah, wow. Wow.
But I noticed the same thing. So after Grove College, where I used to teach, closed abruptly in 2017. And for the last few years, not anymore, but for the last few years, I have been doing a little bit of adjunct or part-time teaching at different times at different places. But there were a couple liberal arts schools, a Catholic one and a Methodist one, and also there was a community college here in Jackson County, Michigan.
Sounds like a joke. A Catholic
Well,
school, a Methodist school, and a
well, yeah,
community college.
really, a Methodist, yeah, a Methodist, a
They walk
Catholic,
into a bar. All
yeah.
these schools walk into a bar.
But for the longest time, and it's not true anymore, which is why I won't do it anymore. I really like teaching the kids at the community college better than the kids at
Oh,
the
sure. Yeah,
college
sure.
because they were more
Engaged.
eager to learn.
They were probably paying for their college tuition.
Yeah, and they were more eager to learn. They wanted
And
to
they
get,
had a job, they had a side hustle, so they had
yeah.
better social skills.
So that was, I liked that a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
and plus, that's the background I come from. So I can totally sympathize. That's why I would start off in community college.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was smart or book smart anyway, until I went to community college
Uh-huh.
and professor said, you know what, you should keep going.
Well,
And I had no idea. I was just doing it because I wanted to learn stuff.
yeah.
Right. Um, but
You were way
in,
ahead of me.
actually
I
in
didn't figure
Jackson
out that
Community
whole thing.
College, the reason I'm not ever going to do that again is because in the last couple of years, they have infused their curriculum with wokeness to such a degree
Oh,
that
wow. Wow.
they won't let students write a paper unless it's on a woke topic.
Yeah.
And I said, I even told the students, I said, well, I'm not into it. And if you don't do it, it's cool with me. But I realized, boy, that I'm morally compromised by even participating in.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about that. The last when we were talking, I listened to bits and pieces, and I was thinking that, I always think what of our listeners might be thinking, but on this one, I'll admit, for me too, you made a distinction, Michael, between critical thinking and what I would call consciousness raising, right? That this whole thing going on, they call it critical thinking, but it's really consciousness raising for pet issues. That being said, what do you think are the essentials of a curriculum that teaches critical thinking? Just so we can tease those apart, so they're just not words.
Well, I mean, I think, like I said last time, it's a critical component is doing stuff with your hands,
Yeah.
because people who can figure out how to do things with their hands can figure out how to think.
Okay.
It's really true.
Yeah.
But
But it's very important. If that's true, that's a game changer. And you and I both know it's
and
true.
as far as
The body's
content,
connected to the mind. Yeah.
academic content goes, I think, and I'm an old school Waldorf teacher, but I'm also an English professor, is the more exposure to, you can call it great books if you want to, but you call it, um, the great books thing. The term just annoys me. But to talk it
Well, it got branded, remember?
challenging, and I guess ennobling reading. It doesn't matter, and I should say it doesn't matter. It does matter what it is, but
Yeah.
um, you know, I loved teaching, for instance, classical myth and literature. I would do the Odyssey, but also do the Golden Ass,
Mhm.
or other kinds of things, because those kinds of things, or even the Gallic Wars by Caesar, because those kinds of readings not only offer students a perspective, um, on the world that is no longer, but there's so many things that are applicable to our current moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really, seriously.
Mhm.
With the Odyssey, what's the central theme of the Odyssey? Is a man wanting to return to his family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that I love the thing in the Odyssey with the bed of Odysseus and Penelope is um, built around a tree that's anchored into the earth is one of the
Yeah.
posts of the bed.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
talk about pro-marriage, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of high content, because what happens and what has happened is the academic gatekeepers don't think students can handle that stuff.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know they can. So
Mhm.
here's the story. So when I was a Waldorf teacher, I was the first couple of years I was a Waldorf teacher, I was not happy. I was struggling because the the rule of thumb is teach to the middle,
Right.
right? They teach to the middle.
I was going to bring that up. Go.
And and after a while I was like, this is making me miserable. So I said, fuck it. I'm going to teach to the top. I'm going to teach how I want to teach. And if they fire me, I'll get a job at the post office. I don't care. Um, so I did that. And all of a sudden I was a much happier teacher. And because I was a happier teacher, and because um, I was teaching out of my being, my teacherly being, the students were getting it.
All of that. Yep. Yep.
And
I've got
because
one more thing going on. Go
well, because
ahead.
the idea, the word enthusiasm
Mhm.
means to be filled with the God. If you're teaching with enthusiasm, there's a spiritual thing that's going on.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
inspiration. And what then and I did that for a while, and then I had this class that had quite a few out of, like, say 16 or 20 kids. I'd say a quarter of them had what we would call a learning disability, but they didn't know it. But I knew it. And they had to do an IEP before they
Mhm.
went to high school.
Hmm.
to get them placed in the right situation. And there were two kids in particular that came to get their IEP evaluations within a couple of weeks of each other. And they had two different evaluators. And both of them said to me, "Wow, I don't know what you're doing, but this kid is performing at a much higher level than you would expect for a kid
Hmm.
with these kinds of challenges." And they both said, and the second one said, "Hey, I said, and they didn't know each other." That was
Yeah.
the cool thing. And to the second one, I said, "Well, what do you think? Why?" The other person said the same thing. And he looked at me and said, "You're teaching to the top."
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And he said, "When you teach to the top, maybe the kids at the bottom don't get it all, but everybody moves up."
And can it be reduced? The thing I've always thought about this is when I took a couple of semesters of Hebrew, there was two professors. One was German, Werner Lemke, and he was going to teach the deductive method of learning languages. And I chose Richard Henshaw, who became one of this first. I've told our listeners, me in undergrad, I just had no idea what was going on. I was having fun. I could read books and pass tests well, but the all of a sudden my eyes kind of got opened. And anyhow, I'm in this class with this guy I'll never forget. And there's so many stories about Richard Henshaw, but he the first day we just started reading Hebrew. But the point is, I have a daughter I mentioned who Spanish, and right now they're all doing the inductive method, right? That we can prove it. The true things you can also prove deductively, and this
Yeah.
is going to be about RFK talking to Tucker too.
Yeah.
He gets into this, the reign of quantity or quality, but the inductive method, which we can kind of prove, and so I learned that too I've mentioned my friendship with this novelist, Stephen Vizenci, who is friends with Graham Greene, again, toppled the statue of Stalin in Hungary in 1956. And anyhow, he studied under the great Hungarian literary critic, George Lukács.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and he said, Vizenci told me, and he just knew it. You speak at that very high level. If you were exposed to Russian, Mike, in this real, even at our age, it would be hard for us to deductively learn a new language at all. But
Hmm.
if you were immersed in it, you would learn it. And that's the inductive method. And that's a lot of what
And
you're
that, yeah,
saying.
and that's the other. So I mean,
Got to swim in life, people. Everybody wants to
the
hold their
last
cards.
the last semester I was teaching, I was kind of, this is after going through COVID, right? And I was like, I'll ask these kids some basic questions about the world. And I asked them, okay, who knows? I can't remember if it was, I think it was World War One. No, the Civil War. I said, because we were talking about something that came up. I said, so oh, by the way, when was the Civil War? Nobody could tell me, even the
Yeah,
century,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but they could tell me how many genders there are,
yeah.
right?
And both
And
you go ahead. Yeah,
that's what happens when you give students rich content. They And just like but between rich content and all that handwork we talked about last time, like knitting and woodworking and gardening and all the kinds of practical activities that you get in the Waldorf school, is you get a competent human person who feels both, maybe not an expert, but certainly they feel educated.
yeah.
And because of all the handwork, they feel capable.
Hmm.
And they're not intimidated by the world.
Right. No, everything you say, this is some of the most important stuff out there, that because again, you saw I was kind of diverting to one of my themes. It's like this, but we get it from Barfield, this idea of outness, whatness. The deductive method is still, it kind of favors that worldview that we can stand outside the world and kind of mess with things, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and Jesus
Cartesian,
said you
right?
got to get out of the boat, and the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head and just hide from the world. And the idea of the inductive method, it's a symbol for getting involved in things, and being curious. And I would say it this way too, that, these things get nuanced, that when you talk about people not knowing the dates of the Civil War, there's a certain form of the right, that, and we're going to use the phrase, that Robert Hirsch, cultural literacy, or certainly not to a great extent, the Alan Bloom types, but you can left brain history too. And you and I, when we feel bad for somebody who doesn't know the dates of the Civil War, is that they don't have, again, Owen Barfield or anybody, George Lukács, a sense of history,
Right.
right? Which is just a
That's it.
whole,
That's the thing, right?
yeah, and that's a sense of that beats part of this anxiety epidemic because we can see ourselves as part of a story that's greater than us,
And
Yeah,
so I mean, so the Civil War, just as an example, I mean,
sure.
uh, it's very different from the wars that went before. One reason is because of the technology and the guns they had, but the other part is that they had photography.
Uh-huh.
There's no photo, and the thing is that having that kind of historical sense
Right.
of why, of the march of history. But then
Yeah.
on the other hand, if you go through all that and then you read the Gallic Wars by Julius Caesar, which is really an amazing book,
Okay. I have never read
or
it.
the Civil Wars is actually even more amazing in some
Mhm.
ways. And you read in the Civil Wars that
These are
when,
going to be current events in a few days.
well, yeah,
In
but
the
the
age of the
civil
Caesars that we're entering. Yeah.
in Caesar's the Civil Wars, you're reading about when they would go someplace and the enemy's over here and they're over here,
Yeah.
and there's a river, and Caesar and his generals say, we need to divert the river, and they get out there with shovels
Yeah.
and they divert the course of the river
Yeah.
so the enemy can't benefit from the water.
Uh-huh.
I mean, but you think about that and we're like, well, I just can't. It's too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is pre pre electricity, right?
Yeah.
by,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
1,000 years or
And
more
our
than
listeners
1,000.
know too that there's the story could be told that the interest in history that so fascinates us does have a history, right? Um, that's again Owen Barfield, or in America,
Mhm.
John Lukács, different than George Lukács, the Hungarian I mentioned moments ago.
Yeah.
But I when I worked at the monastery, there was this retreatant who came in, and I don't know, you could tell he was, he had an idea fix or a man, but he just wanted everybody to know that there was a time before ranch dressing was a thing. You know? He just thought that could open people's
How
minds.
did how did people live?
No,
Yeah.
we're not even that, but like it wasn't even their imagination.
Right.
In our family, we have a story about I don't know if it reflects on my wife. No, I think it was my daughter Mary, but she was young. But somebody said when um, Alice Walker's novel The Color Purple was written, and whether it was my daughter or my wife, all of a sudden they're like, "What?" Like that? The Color Purple had a history, um, and because it was somewhat recent where the novel was written. But
Yeah.
the my daughter took it as if the color purple had been invented in
Uh,
19
too
whatever.
funny. Too
Yeah, but
funny.
it was a sense of awakening, and I'm serious. It was a sense of awakening to something really intrinsically interesting about history. This is why my hero Ivan Illich, he's captivating because he uses history as a foreign country. There's a great book by that name by David Thompson, I think. The Past is a Foreign Country. You can
Yeah.
situate yourself. All he did at the end of his life, because he was too old to learn Sanskrit, he wanted to see the world, the crazy world we're living in, from kind of an Archimedean point, right? Even though I
Mhm.
war against them. But he just couldn't do it. His brain was too fried. He already knew too many languages. So he just immersed himself because he was a great scholar of Latin. But he immersed himself in the 12th century, everything. So then his best books were written because he could look at the 20th century, then the 21st, through the lens of the 12th century. And that was the platform. And that's why we love Ivan Illich now.
Yeah, I mean that book ABC, right?
Yeah, yeah, right, right, right.
It would never been written without that an immersion in the Middle Ages.
No, no.
Um, so so anyway, so I watched, or yeah, I think I watched that
The
interview.
subject of today's podcast,
Well,
ladies and
it
gentlemen.
was
Yeah,
right
yeah,
after the announcement and stuff, and I was surprised. And well, of course, Tucker Carlson was right on top of it and interviewed Bobby Kennedy right after that announcement
sure.
stuff dropped. And it was, I mean, it was interesting. Like, Bobby Kennedy to me is always interesting to listen to, and I like,
Yes.
even smart people who are being honest. Even if I disagree with them, I have so much respect for them.
That was a theme of what they were actually talking about too,
Yeah.
the team of rivals approach.
But when he got toward the end, when he started talking about creation, I stopped. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is sophiology. This is pure sophiology right here.
Mhm.
Because I wrote down a couple of quotes, but one of the things he said, where'd it go? Yeah. I mean, one of the things he said is soil is the answer.
Yeah, that's a Wendell Berryism. That's the
That's a
archetypal
Rudolf
thing. Yeah.
Steinerism, right?
Right, right, right.
Right when people talk about carbon capture and all this carbon madness,
Mhm.
right? Out here, they're trying to put up all these solar farms. They're trying to sell gigantic farms and turn them all into solar farms, which is so ludicrous.
Mhm.
And people are fighting against it. But we have Gretchen Whitmer as our governor, and she's evil, and so are her people. But he's right. I mean, goes back to Rudolf Steiner. 1925 or 1924 with the agriculture lectures, everything about biodynamics is about the soil.
Soil. It's the root
Everything is
metaphor
about
for
the soil.
everything. Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
right.
It's very divine
I know
feminine,
it.
by the way, too,
And I know it from
listeners.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you sequester. I mean, so at our garden, for instance, you've been to my house. It's on a hill.
Yeah.
So in our garden, I make the beds. They go perpendicular from where the hill goes.
Okay.
So that way, when the water runs down, it gets caught by the sides of the beds,
I
and
used to teach that to my college students. Yeah.
it doesn't run down and well, it still runs down, but some of it runs down, but it doesn't all run down into the floodplain.
Mhm.
Just this basic, simple thing of sequestering water and carbon.
Yeah.
Um, and I could talk about compost for a long time.
Yeah.
But the whole point is, and Bobby Kennedy was right. If you got people on this kind of food, and I know this from experience, personal, I mean, with seeing in my kids and in myself,
In
and you
myself.
give them real food, mostly. So like I said before, like, I think last time, like probably 70 to 80% of our food comes from our backyard.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but once that happens, and we will get raw milk from neighbors,
And the rest, ladies and gentlemen, is Slurpees
that's right. It's all
and hot dogs.
and Slurpees.
These red hot dogs that sometimes you see. Yeah.
But the point being is, I know for a fact, if you get people onto real food, their health improves
Yeah,
profoundly.
everybody says, like, if you could tell anybody anything super important, it would be eat real food.
And
You know,
that's
you
it.
look at everybody, whether they're trying to battle weight gain, whether they're trying to like beat cancer, eat real food. Eat real
You
food.
know, I don't know if you know who Kale Zeldin is,
I
right?
do. I do.
And Kale, so today on X, he dropped something.
He's buddies with Larry. They do a lot
He is,
together.
he is
Yeah.
But he dropped something today about organic food. I can't remember what it was.
Mhm.
How can I get away from GMOs or something? And I said, start a garden or meet a farmer.
Yeah, you don't need that much. I've got less than a third of an acre, and I've got
Yeah.
a lot of food.
But then somebody commented on that thread saying, "Well, organic's expensive, and I live here, and it's hard." And all I said, and I wasn't to the disser, but it's actually true. I mean, what's more expensive, organic food or lifelong medication because your
Yeah.
health is
Yeah.
destroyed?
Again, garden. Last night, I live in upstate New York. I had 4 different fresh fruits. I had a pear from my own just backyard. I had a pear, I had a peach, I had a blackberry, and I had grapes. It's just not bad. It's not a bad way to live. When you're out
No.
there, it's kind of a nice fall night. Just kind of eat. And obviously you can be picking at green beans. And I'm not going to say, of course, you can be picking at kale, but I'm not saying that's tasty. But a fresh green bean is a really neat thing. Um, and let me tie in because I want your opinion on this too, because um, we knew we could do a whole show on just the 12-minute of the end of the interview.
Yeah.
But we could probably do a whole show on just this part of it, the topsoil and carbon, because I got the chills because this is the big theme. And again, you name it, Michael, as Sophia versus Ahriman.
Yeah.
But it's whole number versus spirit. And he said when you reduce it to Carmen, you reduce it to measurable things. And that's the whole Boris Pasternak thing, the reign of our guest, Christopher Krama, the reign of numbers, Renee Guénon would say. But for Boris Pasternak, again, like it was anything human versus the tyranny of numbers. And that just says so much to me. Jesus was born in the middle of a census. King David did not like the idea of a census, looking at human beings through the lens of quantity and not quality. And the fact that Kennedy played, instead of left and right, he didn't leave that space empty, folks. He didn't leave it empty. He introduced the major theme we need of the time is, the reign of quality over quantity. Right now, left brainism and the reign of quantity is, look at that as the driving force. In Steiner's terminology, they call that Ahriman.
But and this is what
Bobby
said.
Do your homework. Yeah.
What Bobby said, though, I mean, to even drive it home further, he said the devil quantifies.
Yeah, right.
His exact words.
Yeah, it was great.
And in my notes here, the devil quantifies / Ahriman, right?
Yeah, we said the same
Which
thing. Right?
You got to think. I mean, he's got to.
We don't know. I mean, I know you're saying that he must have read Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
No, I think you could get that basic idea from so many. That's what art is in our time. that's the paradigm that you call Sophia versus Ahriman. That Rene Guénon, the reign of,
But
you
I'm
don't
sure,
necessarily need Steiner, but you
yeah,
could be
but I'm
right.
sure he
Yeah.
knows about biodynamic farming.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I'm
If
sure
he
he
was a
knows.
nature guy, you're right. And
And you can't
yeah,
avoid it. I mean, Prince Charles knows about it. And Prince Charles,
yeah,
or he's King Charles now. I used to have respect for him before he became a globalist douche.
yeah,
But he, you know, he sponsored the Temenos,
yeah,
Institute, and
yeah,
he also has a couple of biodynamic farms that
yeah.
he has people run for him.
You were telling the
Mhm.
story of Kennedy with the whale head.
Yeah.
And it's paradoxical because, like, again, kind of the same part of the interview, he uses the idea of whales. He said, "Didn't we all get in this movement of loving the earth because of the whales?" And
Yes.
what do the Democrats want? They want these offshore wind farms that are actually making one of the whale species extinct. And he just showed such calm, wise, righteous indignation at the idiocy. And he mentioned, where is it going, folks? It's going to BlackRock. He named it.
That's
This is pretty high level to be naming BlackRock. Most of the people would say, you name something like BlackRock, you're playing with conspiracy theories or something. No, you're not at all. BlackRock's a thing.
if that makes him a kook. I'm a kook, you know.
Yeah.
But he
Because it's
talked
our
about,
topsoil, again, going down the Mississippi with entities like
and this is
BlackRock being anything to do with the Midwest.
and that's the insanity of that the so-called net zero movement is it's anti-environmental. I mean, they put up
100%.
those wind farms offshore, which kill whales, and then they put the wind farms onshore, which kill eagles
Hmm.
and other kinds of birds by the millions. And then they put up these solar farms, which take habitat away from deer and everything else, and just put a blight upon the land. I mean, it's just not hard to figure out that this is absurd, right?
Let me insert Guido
There,
Caprata's
in
theory.
England or
Yeah,
Scotland, they're cutting down like thousands of acres of trees to put up
yeah,
solar farms. I mean,
yeah,
for fuck's sake, it's just crazy.
yeah. But our
And
listeners are
the thing
thinking, like,
is,
where are we going to get our energy? Go ahead. Yeah.
and the where he and Tucker Carlson both actually approached the Sophianic is when he was talking. One of the things he says, God talks to human beings through
Oh,
many
beautiful.
vectors, right? And he's
Yeah.
talking about scripture and the
All the
great
parables,
tradition, yeah.
they just use
But
nature to teach.
but that holy kind of experience that people have, even if they don't have a religious background,
Yeah.
through nature,
Yeah.
through
He was
creation,
very eloquent on it.
and both. It's interesting. Both Bobby Kennedy and Tucker Carlson are outdoorsmen, people, guys who do fishing and hunting, and Bobby Kennedy also does falconry.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was just actually wrote about my Substack today on Hearn the Hunter.
Everybody go to the Druid Stairs back. I have a
That's
funny,
right.
we
But
have to
that's
talk
the
about my
thing.
priest friend who contacted you. Go ahead.
When people who don't have a relationship to nature, especially intellectuals,
Uh-huh.
um, they're it's even I said Sebastian Morello in his book. I think he would say, unfortunately, then what's gonna happen? They're gonna intellectuals who don't have a relationship to nature will eventually poison people with their horrible ideas.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a paraphrase, but that's the idea, and it's true.
Yeah.
And you can see, and I know this from living the life I live, and the people I know who, especially the people who hunt, they're the most loving and appreciative of the creation of anybody I know. And
I
this
can
is true.
verify that. And I'm
This
sure it's
is
not every hunter, but I don't know if I've met a
It's pretty
hunter.
darn close.
Yeah. Okay. So you know many more. I
I know a
haven't, I'm being
lot.
honest. I know a lot of hunters. I haven't met any that I thought didn't have that type of reverence for what they were doing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All the
There's got
guys
to
out
be
there,
some. I think
and I
we've
know.
got to be honest. There's got to be
I'm sure
some.
there's some hillbillies out there who
Yeah.
are, have a deliverance relationship to nature.
Yeah.
But most of the people I know, I mean, all the people, I can't say most, all of the people I know who hunt have that same um, intuition of the sacred that accompanies the
How
hunt.
do young boys move from pulling the legs off spiders and even torturing frogs to reverencing nature?
Well,
Great question. I just
well,
came
this
up with it.
happened.
It's a great
Here's an
question. Okay.
example. Here's an
Okay.
example. So just Sunday, my 23-year-old son Aiden
Great
came to
name. I've
house
got one of
church.
them. I got one of them.
He came to house church,
Mhm.
and we're
Is he
talking.
not? Is he allowed not to come to house church? No, he came home.
No, but he
I was
lives
thinking, like,
he
is he
lives,
sleeping in the
he
room
probably lives
next
20
door?
miles
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
But he
For
came,
God's sake, get out of your bed and come to house church. Okay.
and he
I was
doesn't
picturing
usually
him
come.
sleeping. Yeah.
But he came, and we're talking, and one of the things he was talking about is how much he didn't appreciate it at the time. And I don't think he
Hmm.
appreciated it when he moved out 3 or 4 years ago. But he appreciates it now that he grew up here in a relationship to nature. And he was talking about how he would just I would spend 8 to 10 hours outside in the woods
Yeah.
hunting or hiking or whatever. And I realized how much they gave me.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say is you go from pulling the legs off spiders, and that's probably a city boy thing mostly,
Okay.
or torturing animals. But then to just having that relationship with the creation, it teaches you without words,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
of course, my kids growing up, with farm animals and stuff.
Hmm.
You don't, and that you realize even though you're going to use some of these animals for food, you don't want them to suffer
Right.
and ever in their lives,
Hmm.
right? So and I have this experience like these lambs. I just love these lambs I have right now. They are headed to the freezer, but I still love them. I
Yeah.
love to hang out with them and take
Hmm.
care of them,
Yep.
and that might seem, wrong to some people, but the thing is, all of us get our subsistence from the death of others, whether it's
Hmm.
plants or even if you're a vegetarian, you better believe that the farms where that food is being raised, there's a lot of animals dying,
Yeah. But
especially if
they
you.
say, like, in a wheat combine, like, gazillions of mice are garbled up.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And birds and other
Yeah.
things, or a soybean field, right? So soy is a
Yeah.
big thing for people who are vegetarians or vegans.
Yeah.
And soybean field, you're going to kill all kinds of stuff. Now, the interesting thing is that the way we do with sustainable farming, we still, I'm sure, once in a while, but not very often. Well, sometimes you have to, but sometimes you might incidentally, working like we work, kill like a salamander or something, and you never
Sure.
always feel bad about it. But we don't use we don't use tractors.
Uh-huh.
We use hand tools.
Hmm.
And I mean, we're old, but when we get so much produce from this garden that it's
Yeah.
enough for 40 families through the course of the
Hmm.
season,
Yeah.
and probably
That's a
more.
lot. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a
That's really
lot.
wild. Yeah. Um, the Kennedy piece, say more. What else interested you? I'm looking,
Um,
I even took some
well, the
notes.
thing is, and then this is where he really became sophiology for me when he started talking about the great religious traditions and the importance of trees,
Yeah.
the importance of nature for those traditions.
He
And again,
made those words because he was contrasting it again in my parlance. And again, when I got the chills, was when he was contrasting carbon with nature. When he uttered the words like fish and birds,
yeah,
they felt so alive. Like it was actual poetry when he was speaking. And people might think I'm trying to be hyperbolic, and I'm not. When you just think of statistics, then you think of a bird. Or
yeah,
remember Chesterton's famous line, Chesterton, he had two relevant lines, regarding what you were just saying about like life feeding off of other life, whether it's animal or vegetable. Remember, he
mhm.
talked about the green blood that flowed silently from the vegetable kingdom. But the uh, continue.
Well, he talked about Moses in the burning bush,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Mohammed in the cave encountering the angel Gabriel,
Hmm.
right? And he talked about the Buddha and the Bodhi tree.
Yeah,
All these examples, and Jesus in the 40 days, the best part was about when he talked about Jesus in the 40 days in the desert, and then he talked about John
yeah. I thought it was a
his
highlight
mentor.
too. Yeah,
And this is I've been writing about this for a long time, and we talked
yeah.
about it last time, where John the Baptist calls Jesus from the future.
Yeah, and all of his words came out. He's probably said this number of times, but he wasn't reading a teleprompter.
No,
He was so eloquent about the names of all the traditions and the way he had come personally to kind of apprehend John the Baptist and Jesus and so forth.
no,
It was kind of very convicting language the way he talked
it
about
was.
that.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I think we may have, where Jesus, was when he spoke to the intellectuals of his time, it was not in the glowingest terms.
Yeah.
But the his main audience was the peasantry, and he
Yeah.
talked to them in metaphors of nature and husbandry and
Yeah.
agriculture, the mustard seed or whatever. And that's one of the things Bobby Kennedy was talking about. And,
Mhm.
and I have written more than a little about visionary experiences and trees,
Yeah.
like Joan of Arc and the tree where she saw Saint Michael,
Mhm.
or the kids at Fatima where they saw Our Lady on a tree,
Mhm.
and Bernadette where she sees Our Lady in a grotto,
Mhm.
and it's connected with. I love the part where the Virgin tells Bernadette, "Go to the stream and wash," and there's no stream, and she
Right.
starts digging in the ground and putting the mud on her face, and all of a sudden a spring rises up from the earth.
Essentially the same story as La Salette,
Yeah,
1846 in France, where I visited, very inspiring.
it
I
is very
related.
inspiring, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how it works, man.
Yeah. Do you think some of the people you mentioned Steiner, and I'm just thinking out loud that, I keep on telling people the opposite of screens in classrooms isn't classrooms without screens, it's nature. But also the way he was talking about nature with the idea of 2000 years after the incarnation. There's a retreat talk I gave at the Abbey of the Genesee, and I think it was Maximus the Confessor, but Father Gerard de Souza, the abbot, he knew I was using this line, but to talk about the book of nature, that I think it was Maximus the Confessor said, we were given the book of scripture because we had lost the ability to read from the book of nature.
Right.
As we move through this time, with what we do now know, and I'm not saying all world religions are the same. People who know me know I don't even think I think, religion might have been the negative instance of, this guy, Christian in Aros. You had
Mhm.
the ecclesial experience that got transfigured into religion, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we've lost the ability to read from the book of nature. Could what Kennedy is saying about the sacramentality of nature, Sophia, the descending of Sophia, the great rose, and things like this, could it be that we are being called to learn to read from the book of nature again as a way of getting out of this crazy left brainism, this ant heap, this termite mound, this mechanical scientific way of looking at the world that reduces everything to carbon?
No, I think that's what I've been pushing for a long time now. But
Yeah.
but I think what was amazing to me is to hear somebody in political life basically um espouse Sophiology in a very clear way.
And what if, again, make it clear for our listeners,
Well,
what
that
specifically
basically he's saying
distinguishes
that
them?
basically he's the kind of what the central Sophianic intuition at that divinity shines through nature at times,
Yeah. Terrence Malick's
right?
films. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the splendor. And
The supernaturally
the thing is,
natural.
when that happens, you don't look at nature as something to be optimized.
Hmm.
You really look at nature in terms of being a steward, or
Yeah.
or being in relationship to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, on our farm we don't use power tools. Like once in a while I'll use a rototiller, but not very often. Um, and that's about as heavy as it gets here.
Yeah.
But you realize when you have, in fact, just what was I doing yesterday? I clean. Well, it was CSA day, so there was this one bed where we had carrots, and I got the rest of the carrots out of that bed, probably, I don't know, 10 pounds, 50, 20 pounds. And there was a toad that jumped out of,
Well, it's always fun to see
came
him.
out. And it was kind of, but if I had used power tools, he would have been in 100 pieces,
Uh-huh.
you know? And you see that and you're, oh, I always talk to them when I see them out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I get it.
You know what I mean? Hey,
Yeah.
so if he's in my way, I'll move him out into like another bed,
Yeah.
put him in the leaks. Um, but you become a different person by having that experience.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as I've said before, I don't think this is just something that is particular to certain kinds of people. I think this is a fundamental human impulse.
I know, but let's put it this way, as opposed to what we typically perceive as left and right, or conservative and liberal, or Republican and Democratic. Again, another way of saying Sophia versus Ahriman is the degree to which we reduce our vision to a left brain scientific way of looking at something, the harder it is to have those experiences of nature, right? And this is one
Right.
of the things that we get passionate about. Where the position is not against science, but it says science is a tool, and now it's become the master.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
in scientism, and we saw
yeah,
as
yeah,
over COVID, who the new priest became, or the new pope became Anthony Fauci, right?
yeah, right,
People listened to him for spiritual guidance, really,
yeah, yeah.
and it was diabolical.
And he was happy to hand it out.
And he was. But on the other hand, I mean, just using Bobby Kennedy and Tucker Carlson as examples. I mean, Tucker definitely a man of the right, Bobby definitely a man traditionally of the left.
Uh-huh.
But they both agree when it comes to nature, and both of those guys were tearing up
Yeah.
talking about this relationship to nature. So I don't think this is a left-right thing.
No, no.
Unfortunately, I think, and as Bobby Kennedy mentioned there, he would try to get Republicans to listen to this, and they were like, "But it'll hurt profit." And
Uh-huh.
but now, with the green movement or the net zero or carbon zero thing, it's insane, and it's just the opposite of that the what Heidegger would call care.
Yeah, yeah.
You come to after you exhaust, you're being thrown towards death. What if you can exhaust it, then what you come to is care. And both
Hmm.
of those gentlemen, I think, are in their relationship to nature is one of care,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so it shows you it's not a left right thing. And I think I've been thinking about this a lot because people are getting pissed at me because 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 I like these two guys talking to each other,
Yeah. It's
and
weird.
I don't care, but and you would assume. And here's the thing, and I don't know I don't know what you think about this. It seems to me that this movement with what they're calling the Party of Unity, or whatever they're going to call it, with figures like Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard now aligning with Trump in a kind of coalition, right? Is to me that kind of destroys the Democratic Party as we knew it and the Republican Party because I hate both of them, right?
Do you
It
think it does
destroys both of them.
necessarily succeed? So we're talking about a political realignment, You think this is likely, you're saying?
Oh, it's already happening.
It is.
And this is and the thing is, you see now, I don't. It's hard to gauge, because everything is so curated.
Mhm.
But when you also have people like Brett Weinstein, I mean, you couldn't be more progressive and liberal than that guy. Oh, or
Or
Naomi
Jimmy
Wolf,
Dore, or yeah,
Jimmy Dore. I mean, all
Glenn
these
Greenwald, yeah.
traditional lefties who, now I don't know. Now I think, um,
Wonder what Glenn
yeah,
Greenwald or Michael Tracy said.
yeah,
And
all those
yeah,
guys, right?
yeah, I
And
think so. I have to read them.
but I don't know what their relationship to nature is, but they have this whole movement, if we call it that,
Glenn
has
Greenwald
kind of
has a lot of
short circuited
dogs.
that whole left right Republican Democrat thing.
I think so. I think so. But so what we see, I'm thinking two things, Michael. One is, the whole notion that at least the idea that they're 5 steps ahead of us. Okay, just put it on the table.
Yeah, yeah, the
I'm not quite
archons, right?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite there. But the other one would be, we will be seeing, if what you're saying is true, in the next couple of days and weeks, we'll be seeing a massive attack on something, counterattack, because
Oh yeah.
this is trending, a political realignment. And I think I saw some of it, and I have great respect for our military dead. But driving home, and I listened to some way somebody was telling, and I'm less telling our listeners, I don't know the whole story here, but the way CNN was handling something about Trump and Arlington National Cemetery, it's got like some weird storyline that I think is part of this reaction against
Oh
a
yeah.
possible realignment. They were just trying to say that like literally Donald Trump hates every and again, deepest apologies that I don't have the exact number, every 47,000 war dead at Arlington, that he was just stepping on them and trying to shit on them. So the way they just are rearranging the whole narrative, there was
Well, yeah, they're
desperation.
trying to,
It was desperation. It was
and part of this
desperation.
war is the propaganda war, right?
Yeah, yeah, massive.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's the archons. Remember that song? I don't know if you remember it. "Wicked Messenger" by Bob Dylan.
I'd have to hum it.
Which actually, then the Faces on their first album did it. There was a wicked messenger from Shallow he did come, whose mind had a mind that could divide the smallest matter, right?
Okay,
It's
yeah,
all
yeah,
about
yeah,
calculation, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's very harmonic. And and that's what you get from the archons, right? These are the assholes who are pushing net zero and all this other stuff and digital currency and you know what do they call it? Vaccine passports or all this kind of stuff. They're all
yeah,
this kind of
yeah,
mechanistic bullshit that they're
yeah.
pushing. And the people who are pushing against it, and this is where you see them, people who we would have previously have associated with the left or the right or Democrats and Republicans, who are more focused on free speech and personal sovereignty
Mhm.
and peace, which we
Peace.
haven't mentioned. And
Yeah,
all those
yeah,
people want peace. Even
yeah.
Donald Trump wants peace.
Uh-huh.
He did not get us into any wars,
Mhm.
right? And the archons hate that shit.
And let
And
me say clearly on that issue, I think he's so compromised with some representatives of that, and probably getting more compromised by the day, let's say the defense industry or something, or people who represent certain countries. But that was the Soleimani killing. All of a sudden, he owed somebody a favor, and they said, "We're going to put you on the map as doing something really horrible internationally that involves taking somebody's life." So I think that I always want to let people know why I have a lot of cynicism about the Trump figure. But go ahead.
no, but like when and I didn't have cynicism about that so much
I
as
do.
his bungling of COVID.
Both of them
But
together, they're two bad
look,
things.
here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing:
Yeah.
is I do think Trump had really bad people around him.
He did. I can testify to it. I know people who know people who, again, he comes in, he did not think he was going to win. He was surprised. But what
I
happened,
believe,
and we heard Vladimir Putin have fun with this, that the establishment, kind of around Mitt Romney, but it was certainly the intelligence agencies, but all of a sudden you have people like Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State.
right?
And it's only because, and again, I happen to know something about Elliot Abrams was getting talked about before that, and people got involved. But then this machine surrounded Trump so quick,
But
so fast.
that's what another thing I like about the coalition with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, who
Okay.
know the inside much better than he does.
Mhm.
So, but
He knows a lot now after 4 years.
well,
He's
hell
got
yeah.
to, yeah,
But I
for sure.
think, and I don't, you never know what's going to happen. But um, because put it this way, Mike, Bonnie and I are still old hippies.
Right.
My when we had the conference here in 2016, my son Aiden, who was then must have been 15 or 16,
Yeah.
he was calling it hippie barn fest for the longest time. We're still gonna have hippie barn fest again this year.
Yeah.
Um, because I have, like I've said before, I mean, when Bonnie and I got married, we were um skeptical of vaccines. We were into home births.
Mhm.
We were all about organic food and homeschooling and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
We were as about alternative as you can get. And at the time, if I would have described, given a description of how we were, people would say, "Oh, you're Democrats or liberals, right?"
Uh-huh.
But since that time, if I lay out that description of a family, people would immediately think, "Oh, you're Republicans or
Yeah. No.
conservatives or whatever," right?
So
And
true.
we always say, we haven't changed, but it's like the whole world has gone 180 degrees around us.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
And
blissfully,
we've been
I just,
anti-war. I've been anti-war for I don't know how long, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Right? The
I think I was
Democrats
just
are
kept
pro-war.
in a hermetically sealed bubble until, again, I've kind of alluded to this until maybe after undergrad, when I was always just like, as a kid, I was on my toys, my bikes, and my big wheels and things like that. And then, you're out there in the swamp. Then you go to college and you're just having fun playing games. I never went to class. You write papers for things called tests. And then, so I think what was fun is I almost never read a lot of other books that might have dulled my brain, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
That if I'd read textbooks or something, it might have been harder than it was
Mhm.
to kind of just at least try to think for myself. Very, very interesting.
Well, yeah, and then that's actually something that has lived with me for the longest time. And I used to always ask students this, how do you know if you're brainwashed? Do you know?
No.
Now, how do you know if you're not? You know? And I think that's when people talk about critical thinking, that's what I think it's should do.
Yeah.
You give you the tools to figure that out. And we live in such an environment of propaganda. It is so hard to
Okay, so
keep
say a little
clear.
bit more about that. Earlier, you said a very remarkable thing that you probably underrate. You said that, and you made sense of it, that people who work with their hands are more likely to be able to use their brain as a tool. That says more than it says, because it also talks about, it alludes to 12 episodes we could do on the mind body thing.
Uh-huh.
But say a little bit more about those tools that would help one uncover the idea of, are you brainwashed or is somebody else?
Well, I think the thing is when you have the tools of being actually to manipulate things in the real world, whether it's a garden or a carpentry or
Okay, so you're reducing it to that again. I think it's beautiful. I think
no,
you're
but I
right.
think when you and this is what I know with people I know who do those kinds of things
Yeah, they know how to
are
do it because
much
they know
better
how to do it.
thinkers than the
Yeah,
academics I know.
yeah, yeah. That's why farmers are often so bright. Wendell Berry lamented the loss of every farm because there's a number of fewer humans who wake up in the morning and know kind of what to do.
Yeah.
Where people, if they don't know what to, if they have downtime, they're either on the video games or in their state of high anxiety,
And that's
right?
the thing.
So they're not at home in the world. The world is not sacramental.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
I love that. They're not at home in the world.
no, no, no.
And I think we this is our, I mean, I think the trans phenomena is an example of people who are not at home in the world.
Right.
They're so not at home in the world, they're not at home in their own bodies.
How about plastics leading to higher estrogen? Related, but in all seriousness and with
No,
compassion, people.
I was just talking about this a few days ago too with
Yeah, we
someone.
have to. We have to.
And I think it's a real thing.
Yeah, me too.
And I think I saw something today, and I don't know if it's true or not. I think it was Nicole Shanahan who shared it on X, saying that the childhood obesity and health epidemic started quickly and it can end quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
By getting all the shit out of food. And my God, I don't know if you saw this, that I think it was not the New York Times, it was Time Magazine, had a story that they, on their cover, something was, let me see, I don't know if I'm not going to look for it, it would take too long. But the take home was, maybe highly processed foods aren't that bad after all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it looks like I got marching orders from Nabisco or somebody owned by BlackRock, right?
Right.
And it's true if you see those organizational charts of who actually owns all this stuff, it's all BlackRock.
Yeah. They come out. They used to come out in the Nation magazine. Remember when that was good? It might still be
Yeah,
good. They'd always every year have the map of like who owns what.
yeah,
ABC owns ESPN, owns Disney, or Disney owns them all by far, and a
yeah.
lot
And the
more.
thing is, and this is, I mean, this goes back to distributism. I mean, I think in a way, what Bobby Kennedy, with his endorsement of the soil and he's endorsed regenerative farming on a lot of occasions.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. But that to endorse regenerative farming is basically to endorse either, you can call it one of two things. You can call it Thomas Jefferson's idea of the yeoman of the country as a nation of yeoman farmers, which didn't happen, but it should have. But the other side of that is what Chesterton would call distributism.
Yeah.
Right. That, I mean, to me, that's what, there's a little bit of hope that I see. Well, you know what? Because when I wrote Transfiguration, that's the direction I was headed. And I said in Transfiguration that these maniacs in charge of things aren't going to let this happen without a fight.
No.
But
we gotta go smaller people, smaller entities, extended families, everybody's equal, love everybody. Yep.
Small is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But I think
say more.
I don't know if it'll, who knows what's going to happen. It always doesn't come out as well as you'd like. But they give me hope that at least the vision that we have espoused on this show over the last, how long have you been on the air? 2 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And plus, I mean, since we were here at the conference in 2016.
Yeah, for sure.
It's basically, this is an outgrowth of what we were talking about there, right? Is this holistic vision of how things could be.
Yeah.
Right? It's not complicated and it's not hard.
No.
It's not a sophisticated thing. It's super simple.
So let's spend a few more minutes trying to say a couple things. One would be So there's a political realignment. Cool. What next? I get very serious about scale, that, we need um, smaller entities. We need smaller political entities. You and I want our listeners to know, like, what next? One is go out and get involved in a garden, join a CSA, worrying about who's Kennedy or Trump. Just like my old friend Father Ed, who's passed away, he was a progressive and did more work on the streets than 500 other priests combined. And so I have no right to judge. But he thought more about, like, who is Pope in a day than I did in a month. I've trained myself to think locally. Um, and and then when I look at a political realignment, the idea of somebody, we're not doomed. I think there's very something cyclical going on. People hear me say that Trump is a Caesar figure, and that some of this stuff which seems like schadenfreude. And Trump is a very, very funny guy. The thing about Kamala and Biden is there's nobody there. There's nobody there. And
It
so
is so
there's
vastly
something funny.
different.
And it's kind of like he's also like Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's circus more than Hitler. That's my understanding.
But it's
And
yeah.
and he's funny. But he's not the answer, folks, because he's not inspiring people to do what you were talking about today, Michael, to pick up a tool and learn something.
Well,
He
he's not
really,
going
yeah,
to.
no, no.
But the thing is, my position has always been, but not about him, but in general, is you can't Sophiology can't work, or any the kinds of things we're talking about can't work, distributism,
Yeah.
unless you live in a society that leaves people alone to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And in the state of Michigan, where I live, unfortunately,
The
I mean, I
importance
love
of
the state,
liberty.
I hate the
Liberty.
government.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Liberty.
The state of Michigan has been going after, lately I haven't heard anything, but they were going after the Amish farmers and butchers, and they're
Yeah,
doing it in mostly Democratic states. They're going after the Amish because the Amish are outside of the system and it pisses them off.
yeah.
They were going after this Amish butcher I use, and I mean, people were out there, blocking the state from going in.
I saw a sign in my auto
And it wasn't
parts
just
store
the Amish; it
today.
was,
Yeah,
everybody was out there because with these communities are interactive, where I buy
yeah,
feed, and I
yeah.
actually there's a Amish grocery store not far away. Um, as we talked last week about the donuts, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
But I think the Amish, in a way, offer an example of how human flourishing can happen if the governments leave them the fuck alone,
yeah. Right, right, right.
because they are really
It's not
flourishing.
rocket
Those
science. Yeah,
those those communities really flourish, and they're simple, but they're also generating wealth
yeah.
in a way that is not, you know, disgusting.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's a great thing. And I think if we did live under a regime that allowed people to flourish,
Hmm.
that's what I hope.
Yeah, yeah,
And let's just leave us alone, right?
yeah. And I saw something again, I was going through to an auto parts store, and there's a sign saying vote against, and I'm dealing in my own diocese with what's called an equal rights amendment that really enshrines in New York's constitution, removing age restrictions on anything. So your own kids, Mike, wouldn't have to consult you if they were going to mutilate their body and things. So
Yeah.
I'm very proud of my diocese. I'm very proud of the work I do trying to defeat this measure. But the in the auto parts store, they were saying remember to vote against the proposition, and I forget whether exactly it's a proposition or something, or maybe call your congressman against a law. But it was just saying that it's going to be illegal to fix your own car, right? And their main thing is it's going to put auto repair stores out of business. But my main thing is, like, I really want to preserve. I can't do it, folks. Michael, you're much more handy than I am.
I'm
I
not
can't
that.
fix my car, but I still want my right to fix my car. I would think people wonder about our politics. Are you guys left or right? No, but okay, I can tell you it's not left or right. It's common sense to say it should be legal and remain legal to fix your own car. And
Yeah.
this gets into free speech.
Well,
It
and
should be
here's
legal and remain legal to say like what you want to say without common sense restrictions on fire in a crowded movie theater.
well,
It's
well,
not rocket science. Yeah.
and here's an example. So, when the Biden administration took office, I don't know if I saw one this year, but they started sending out a census every year to small farms like us,
Wow.
seeing how many animals we have, how many do you have, you know what I mean? Like, none of
Yeah.
your business how
The
many
reign
animals
of
you have.
quantity, folks. The reign of
Yeah.
quantity. There it is.
They're, and that had never
They
happened
must be
before.
counted. Jesus and Mary, Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem to be counted. To
And
be
all of us,
counted.
yeah. And,
Sheep.
and all of us out here resented it,
Yeah.
and some people, the first year, I think it was voluntary. So none of us did it. The second year it was mandatory,
Yeah.
and that's how they do it. Right.
Yeah. Google
Um,
Orson Welles, The Human Factor, not The Human Factor, The Third Man, Graham
Third man.
Greene, a Ferris wheel scene, and you'll see it
Oh,
all.
yeah.
The Reign of Numbers. Yeah. Famous,
But,
famous scene.
and that's, and I, I've always, since I was in college, I think, loved that idea of, um, the United States as a country of yeoman farmers, which is not, it's not right now. But I can
Yeah.
think you can tell, I don't know how we fix this, but I think the way society is situated right now with all these huge cities in the United States, it's pathological, and it
The mental
breeds
health epidemic, I
pathology.
was just going to
It
say.
breeds
Yeah.
pathology.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, to wind up a little bit, one of
Yeah.
my favorite books, which I've quoted from too many times, is H.J. Massingham's.
Yeah. I still got to read it.
If you can find, it's the best book. It's my favorite book ever.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know if I can find it,
And say a
but
little bit about Massingham as you look.
Massingham was he wrote mostly in the middle of the 20th century in England, and he he's called an agrarian or
Okay.
ruralist,
Sure.
and he in this book in particular he
Buds
connects,
with, oh, yeah. He was later than
well, he
William
connects
Morris.
like Bobby Kennedy did,
Yeah. Yeah.
the the idea of our relationship to nature with Christianity
Yeah. Yeah.
and with Christ as the carpenter who spoke in agricultural parables.
Yeah.
And I think I told you last time with Bonnie and the sheep, which wouldn't they won't come for her, but they'll come for me because they
That's
know my
great.
voice, right? And it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Bonnie said, it's just like it says in the
Yeah.
gospel. They know the shepherd, the voice of the shepherd.
Right.
They
Right.
really do. It's kind of
That's
funny because
beautiful.
Bonnie will
Beautiful.
be out
Yeah.
there, come on, hello, lammies, and then like,
Uh-huh.
who's that? I've never seen her before.
Yeah.
But here's a quote from Massingham from his
Okay.
book The Tree of Life, which I'm hoping that Angelico Press is trying to see when it becomes available for republication.
Very cool.
It was published in the 40s.
Yeah. They
He's
can make a
talking about,
killing on that, couldn't they? They can
pardon
make
me?
bank.
I would hope.
Elias Krim, I think, knows somebody or was successful at it that way, just to republish a book. I've
Oh
got a
yeah.
few in mind that I won't share with people because they would, they would
No.
steal from me.
Well,
But there's a couple I think could be republished and make a lot of money.
no, that's what Angelico did with the Thomas Traherne book I wrote the forward
Okay.
to, and
We should do a
also
bunch, Michael, with Guido, because we can make bank.
we're making bank, baby. We're
Yeah.
capitalists now.
We're
But
just
anyway,
going to go into archive.org and grab all these titles nobody's ever heard of, but we know are genius.
actually, there's one I'm thinking about. I'm going to talk
I
to.
have one behind me that's on a bookshelf that people could see, and I'm turning it around.
Actually,
Seriously, when I would love in a year from now to go back to this episode and show that book, and I'm just awash with billions of dollars.
that's right.
Yeah.
A flush, baby.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. I
Always
could go
wanted
on about
money.
books that need to be published.
Yeah.
But so here's a little quote from H.J. Massingham from The Tree of
Okay.
Life. And he's talking about the British church, and we would call it probably the Celtic church.
Fair. Yep.
And here's what he says. I love this quote. If the British church had survived, it is possible that the fissure between Christianity and nature, widening through the centuries, would not have cracked the unity of Western man's attitude toward the universe.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what I think, and he talks about this very often through this book,
Yeah.
is when Christianity departed from the cosmos,
Yeah.
it became corrupted.
Yeah. Philip
And
Sherrard, the Orthodox scholar, has some good work on that. Then I think he goes too
yeah,
far other places, but he's brilliant on that. For like
but
Temenos, probably wrote
but
it.
that's, I mean, that's basically a Sophiological insight.
It is.
That if the church year is united to the cosmos and the agricultural year, you start to fix all the sicknesses in society
Yeah.
already because you have an accurate description of reality.
Hmm. I
And
had
I
some
think that,
Michaelmas thoughts the other day that I'll share in a future episode, but call me on it in a future episode.
yeah, and that's
Is
what I
what we're
was
called to do
inspiring
now.
about
Yeah,
Bobby Kennedy, the end of that interview with Tucker Carlson. That's what's inspiring about that because he's kind of articulating that kind of vision.
he is. And with
And
such a,
I
when they say
support
you
that.
need a bucket of water to hand out a drop, when people hear him talk on the environment, the guy, like, he knows his stuff,
Yeah,
which, not to beat up on Kamala Harris too much, but like to like the Tucker Carlson Bobby Kennedy interview, you had two grown men having serious conversations about serious stuff. And when Bobby Kennedy's talking about nature and law regarding nature and bad corporations, he speaks, as they say, of Jesus in the Gospels. He speaks with authority, you
he
know.
does, absolutely.
Yep. And it's much better listening than a lot what's on offer in politics. For one, that's just one reason alone. You should be interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
The
And it,
real people talking about real ideas.
and it gives you at least a glimpse of a vision of what could be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I used
And
to be
that
too cynical to
maybe
accept it. My
and
oldest
that
son's
maybe
way too cynical on it.
and that maybe politics isn't going to be, you know, horrible forever.
Yeah, yeah.
That we could have a maybe it won't be good forever either, but maybe we could have a moment.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A golden age. As much as I think we were talking about, was I talking with you? That, I mean, it could be that because of this, we'll see how it happens.
Yeah.
It would be interesting that we could have an American Renaissance
I really believe that's why I'm reading Edmund Wilson. He's necessary reading for the idea. Stephen Clark, our former guest, he's crucial to understanding a future American Renaissance. It's going to involve Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's going to be underworld up. So, get your anarchist. Remember, it's not all bomb throwers.
yeah,
Read about tribal history as Edmund Wilson did. All of a sudden, he was living amongst the Iroquois, and he felt like he walked into a different world.
yeah,
He met people who thought differently, and they thought in a completely different frame of reference.
yeah.
And we're going to need to recover those transitions. So if you call yourself conservative, be like our friend Matthew Milliner and read into your Native American history. What's in your local land? The future is going to be more local. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think American Renaissance, you can also I'll call it a new kind of transcendentalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great moment in
It was.
American history, you know?
Hmm.
But I think we're due, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
We're due.
Yeah. And I think being
I can
human.
only see so many Disney movies, Mike. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we have responsibility for it, would say Sophiology. We're not waiting until God unveils this thing. We have to start participating in the bubbling cauldron. Some things are sinking, some things are rising up. We're gloating so much over the sinking while there's a new political realignment coming. Get involved in your local politics. Get involved in trying to realize the thing that you discern needs to be given birth to. 2,000 years after the incarnation, Jesus is using us. We've got to get involved in things. That's a
Like,
big Michael Martin thing too.
yeah, and I think I had a realization last week that,
About
right, I think a lot of people right now are waiting for the spiritual world to come to our rescue,
yeah,
when really I think the spiritual world is waiting to work through us.
yeah, yeah.
That's where I think that we're at
Well
that
said.
point
Well said. Yeah.
of spiritual evolution.
At that point, and maybe on that note.
Okay.
All right, Michael Martin, thanks so much. Tell people where they can go read your book on poetry. Are you making regeneration mugs? I have a regeneration mug of
I'm
my
gonna
own.
actually, what I do is people if they're
Got
on
a
my
sticker.
Patreon, speaking of capitalism,
Okay.
if they're $15 a month contributors after 3 months, they get a mug.
Okay. Good, good, good.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wrote on Hearn the Hunter on my Substack today.
I saw that. I got to read that
It
one.
might be worth checking out because it's actually very related to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and listeners, if you're interested in stuff like regeneration T-shirt, I didn't put it out there. You'll see that one of our listeners asked if he could get involved, and I'm grateful he did. We'll see. I'm not good at this stuff. I don't plan to make money off it. If my daughter does it, I do plan for her to make some money off it. Not to just do it for free, but it won't be. We're not going to use it to land shark anybody. But I think if people are walking around with regeneration podcasts, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Who was that guy that used to do those commercials?
Who are you
And if you
talking
like
about?
now, and if you get, it slices, it dices, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. All those infomercials, late at night. There's a bunch of guys. We used to memorize those in college. I mentioned I never went to class. We would memorize infomercials about like the inside the egg scrambler or the vertical roaster for chickens. What were
Or the or the George, what was it? The George Foreman grill, right?
Yeah, that was big. Yeah. We would do like sketches of me being the guy who comes out on stage with the price they're going to offer, like 3 installments of 1995, and then in some cases, the ones we would just watch time and time again, like they're just throwing people in front of them off the stage as they deliver the deal.
Hell, we're
Yeah.
giving them away. That's right.
Yeah, we just study the techniques, and we would watch bass fishing shows and study their techniques too. Just how they'd bring in a bass and the things you'd say if you were catching a big bass. But for all it was us, it was virtual. It was virtual.
All right, here we go.
Yep. Yep. All right,
Okay,
Michael, we're going to do this again sometime soon.
we will.
All right.